Well, good afternoon. Peter will be clarifying all my remarks for me here today, so good to see all of you. First of all, a thank you to the professional teams, Commissioner Campbell at MMB, Dr. Klamakidis, our state economist, and of course, Budget Director Anna Mingi. These folks spend a lot of time on this. Unlike many of us, they are CPAs, they are deep in this. They spend a lot of time preparing, and they brief us starting early this morning. So I got a chance to see these numbers at 8 o'clock this morning and start to do what you're doing, is starting to parse through them. I think that the top line on this, a thank you to the people of Minnesota, hardworking folks with very high labor participation rates, an economy that continues to grow, is producing jobs, some of the highest per capita incomes in the country, and overall very solid. But I think I would mix that in with what you heard from them. We need to be measured on how we approach this. One thing that I'm very proud of that we insisted was done, I came into this job insisting that you cannot give forecasts without including inflation. So every other time you've heard this here, you could certainly distort those numbers by pulling down $880 million on inflationary needs that were in there. That is no longer true. Something else Minnesota does that not many states do, we project 4 years into the future. The vast majority do 2 years, which would be the current biennium, showing this surplus. I think it's a much better vision to get over the horizon, and it puts us as one of 16 states with a AAA bond rating. With that being said, huge thank yous to the legislature last year who worked on priorities that are important for us to look to towards future, whether it's 26, 27, or more importantly, 2035 and 2040, of what is the economy going to look like in Minnesota? Where are the growth areas going to be? And where are the vulnerabilities that we can control, whether it be workforce, education, housing, childcare, many of the things that we know in the long run bring down costs around that. So I'm incredibly proud where it was a nation-leading child tax credit, whether it was reducing Social Security tax. All those things are revenue declines, but then turning around in investments and making sure that our children are fed. And as you heard in this, many of those things, many of the impacts of this are not captured in this forecast. One of the things that we know is when children get enough to eat and they reach a certain calorie count, educational attainment goes up. Once we see families that are stable in housing, we see much better economic activity. And when you see a state that's focusing, whether it be around medical and biotech, or whether it be clean energy, just this last week or so, we saw $5+ billion investment in Rochester, and we saw Hellion up on the Iron Range investing in our clean technology. So I think this is good news. You see on the slides that we're up here with a $2.4 billion surplus, but what I would say is, and some of you can do the math on that, if you draw a little diagonal between those two lines, if we're cautious on this, we balance out in the out years in a very positive way. And I think that in those investments that went on the front end, we start to see those benefits come in. Again, Minnesota is performing strongly. The numbers still continue to come in. We knew that a lot of this was one-time funding. You're seeing a lot of bridges. I was in St. Cloud yesterday. Nation-leading water treatment plant, totally self-sufficient, produces its own power, sells it back to the grid, also sells the byproducts of that waste plant back to farmers at a profit for that. So the city of St. Cloud leading on many of these things. So the investments we make in bonding, which I think this year is a bonding year, is where we should focus. We should have a solid bonding bill in this. We should take these numbers into consideration. We should leave money on the bottom line as we've done. We have historic surpluses in our rainy day and reserve funds, and then we start to see the payoffs in the investments that we made. So I'm grateful to the folks who worked on this, grateful to Speaker Hortman, Leader Dietzig, the folks in the legislature who make these investments. We're going to see historic job creation, especially in the construction trades, which we're already seeing across the state, whether it be roads and bridges, Blotnick Bridge, Mayo Clinic, all across the state. All of those things will start to generate back into what we know is preparing the economy for the future, preparing our workforce for the future, making those investments in people that will make a difference for the future. And all of those things are a positive. So with that, I'd be glad to take a few questions.
Governor, what about the more expensive than expected breakfast for all kids? Is that a good thing that more kids, or
Yes.
is it going to be a strain on the budget?
When I first got down to Rochester in the first month, the city of Rochester, I think we use it as an example. It's one of our wealthiest cities, or we saw a 17% increase in that. What we know is these are investments in children. We know that those investments, again, it's pretty hard to characterize as wasteful spending when we're seeing more children get healthy meals in school so they're ready to learn. A 17% increase in the early days of people using that. And what was really interesting, some of the notes that I get, I had a mother from Grand Rapids write, it wasn't the students who qualified for free and reduced lunch and weren't being able to fill out the paperwork. She said they were fully middle class. They did not qualify for meals, but it was too expensive to have her 3 children get those. Now her children want to eat school meals. They get them, and she said her morning is far less stressful. She's not preparing and packing meals, and she's saving the money. And so I think we'll see as these things settle out, when you have these new programs, you'll have less spending in some areas, higher spending in other areas. We start to get inside that, start to get that balance. But that's an investment that I will defend all day. I would like to see every student take us up on that, and we'll make the case to how to pay for that.
Where would you be willing to cut spending to start seeing these numbers?
This is on, and remember, this is 26, 27. I'll tell you what I'm not willing to do. I'm not going to give billionaires tax cuts to do this, and I'm certainly not going to take food out of the mouths of children. The issue on this is we're running a $2.5 billion surplus. You could just move that right over to the bottom, and that would be it. I would make the case that the folks in St. Cloud would like to see their water treatment plant done, and if we're in communities where you can't add any more economic activity because you're not building it, we need to be smart about that. But I will tell the legislature, and I've been saying this for quite some time, we did a lot of great work last year. It's time to implement that. It will have a positive impact on workforce development, positive impact on housing, positive impact on the environment, which is helping us build some of this clean energy economy. But we need to be measured. We need to be cautious. This is not the year. So I think we need to be measured. We're not going to give tax cuts to millionaires, and we're not going to spend excessively on things. And so I think at this point in time, give a chance for some of these things to go in. Give a chance for some of them to work. Our responsibility is in this biennium. We do something, and again, for years, people fought this idea of putting inflation into the factor. That is a huge piece of it. That is $1 billion of this is inflationary on that. So you're getting a really accurate picture here. You're getting really ready to ever see these things go. And I do think this issue that we're going to have to, and we're going to have to understand more, is the disability waivers. That makes up half of this. What happened in 2015 makes up half of what the deficit was for the 1 year, or the potential spending piece of that. We need to understand, but I want to be very clear on this. These are our most vulnerable citizens. The 2 pieces that got brought up here is our most vulnerable citizens who were stuck in a waiting line, not getting the services they needed, and children getting meals. I think we'll figure out a way to make sure that we can defend those programs and see how they build to the future.
To groups that want a lot of money, additional spending from the legislature this year. Like there's a headline right now about the U of M seeking up to $80 million for the healthcare initiatives there. I mean, that wipes out the $80 million bottom line.
Well, yeah, this is what we'll do. This is what we'll do over the next 5 months. But mine is be measured on this. This is we've done this. We've got this thing balanced, a surplus created. We know that economically, the United States is still, with the rest of the world, still coming out of some uncertainty. We're in a much better shape than any place else. But I think now is the time to be measured on this. I would ask them to take a hard look at this. The legislature will take a look. You're looking at the bottom line numbers on that. But again, on some of this, those who are going to say, cut all the spending, give tax cuts to these, we've seen that doesn't work. The trickle down doesn't work. But I would tell them, look, we do need to be measured. We need to be careful about where we spend money. The legislature will do what they do. They will debate these, they will triage, and they will put together a budget. I can assure you our budget will be limited. It will be focused on a responsible bonding bill that includes the entire state and projects that matter. And then it will be very focused on implementing policies that we need to get done.
Bonding at less than $1 billion, is that a disappointment?
Pardon me?
Bonding coming in at less than $1 billion?
Well, I recall when I had my first discussions in this in 2019, I was told by Republican leaders, you will never see a bonding bill over $1 billion, ever, those discussions. And we never had one before that. We've done some of those. I think what we changed is we have a more flattened pattern on this. We had a good one last year. We have federal funds coming in on the IIJA and the CHIPS Act and the IRA at levels we haven't seen. I want to thank the legislature once again for doing all the matching funds that were factored into what we need to do for that. So I think that's probably the neighborhood where we'll be. And I don't think disappointed. This is budgeting. This is what you do. You manage it. And I will just have to say this. You don't have to guess to the future. My administration's been doing this for 5 years. We've navigated the most volatile economic situation since the Great Depression. And we've done so by balancing the budget with surplus while investing heavily in the middle class and cutting taxes for the middle class. Those are things that I think you can expect to see. So sure, maybe this is maybe not the year to go a little bigger than that, but what I can assure you is we are going to be responsible, measured, balanced, and we're going to continue to deliver those programs, whether it be meals or whether it be the disability services or whether it be roads and bridges and water treatment plants.
would you?
on the $500 million for childcare that the advocates are seeking, and teachers apparently feel they're getting shortchanged at the bargaining table?
Yeah, we're gonna have the legislature talk about this, and we're gonna talk about this. But the one thing that I think we've been steady about, and I'm very proud of this. I think it's a legacy thing that I'm proud for our administration, that I insisted that inflation be included on how we do things. And this is simply the numbers. This is the numbers. This is what we have to work within. We have a lot of things yet to implement. We are not seeing the benefits of many of these yet. They're not factored in. And I think that's the one thing. And again, they can't project, Dr. Klamakides can't project what the impact of kids with solid homes and with housing, with food, or the impacts of paid family and medical leave that increases worker productivity and allows the state to recruit more workers. So I think I'm just going to tell them, look, these are the numbers. We had an incredible legislative session that invested in folks. We've got a lot of work to do on implementation. We are in a solid place. We should do a bonding bill. We should prioritize those projects, and then we should take a hard look and triage where it makes sense. But I think, as you can see, we're in a good spot. It's this structural deficit issue that comes up. The good news in Minnesota is this is a decision that will be made in the 25 budget year, because this biennium is set. It's coming in with a surplus. It's going. But we can see over the horizon the flashing yellow a little bit to take a look at that. We'll have the opportunity to make that. So I think people should temper where they're going. They should temper where they're at. That includes spending. That's going to come from allies of mine, and Republicans are not going to get their millionaire tax cut. It's not going to happen because it doesn't fit the budget.
Would you raise taxes at all, income tax rates?
It's
there was
too
a
early
capital gains
Yeah, no,
tax
it's too early to
talked
have
about.
these conversations. I don't think that's the case of this. Again, remember, we're in a surplus situation where we're currently at, and we get a chance now to implement the smartness of going over the horizon, the smartness of having the nation leading. Again, I remind everyone, the rainy day funds are above and beyond this at $3 billion, above and beyond the 2.4 that's there. And we have every reason to believe, look, in a $30 billion state budget, we just had a $5 billion private investment going in that is going to create, again, take all the stadiums we built, they're smaller than what the Mayo Clinic did. We have 130 jobs being created in Hellion. All these things are starting to go. I think it's way too early to talk about that. And I've always said this. You've heard me stand up here every time. I said, it's disingenuous not to say, look, everything's on the table. What I can tell you is I'm not cutting meals for kids or services to our most vulnerable to give tax cuts to the folks at the top. We did, and I'm very proud of this, whether it be the Social Security tax cut or the child tax credit. Those were big. And again, in this ledger, tax cuts are expenditures. Tax cuts are expenditures, and that's the way we're going to continue to balance budgets, by being fair.
We had some bad news from Treasury about taxation of the rebate checks. What happened there? I thought you knew the president.
I don't know. We did it here. I say this, that it's the IRS. I will tell you this. I have been on the phone, not much more judicious than that slip there, to let them know. And I spoke to the President's Chief of Staff yesterday when this became clear. Look, Minnesota's being treated unfairly in this. They picked an arbitrary date to end the emergency on May 11th. The legislature did not get finished and sign them over until the 26th, so we missed by 15 days. Every other state was afforded this, and they say, well, we've got to have a red line in the sand. So I deeply disappointed, and I think the idea, if they even think about, downplaying that it's $26, that I will have even harsher words than I started with, because it's just not right.
You said at the beginning it's too early to see the benefits or cost savings from the policies of last session, the changes. When will we start to see these things?
Dr.
Like what will be the first thing
Sir,
we see?
I've asked this, and I think for many of us to know, look, many of these programs are going to take time to stand up, paid family and medical leave, the implications of a child having enough food to eat and not losing that, not entering either into the social service system, criminal justice system. When do you expect to start seeing?
Well, they may be creating benefits now, but it takes a while before it shows up in the economic data. So I need to see the economic data showing evidence of increased labor force participation, things like that.
And I'll just give, on the child tax credits, one I feel most confident about. We saw the reduction in that and the bump up in economic activity that happened with family during the pandemic on a federal level. And when that program stopped, childhood poverty went back up about 6 or 7%, higher in some states, bounced back up again, and we know the cost of that we can start to measure. So that one we think we'll start to see in a relatively quick manner.
In a broad stroke, I guess, where does this put the legislative plan, game plan, if you will, for the upcoming session? I mean, is there
You can ask them, I think.
new policy, maybe?
Yeah, that's what normally happens here. Look, I'm going to be very clear on this. Those who know me, I am not shy to show them my 850 personal credit score because I work really hard on that. I'm pretty fiscally conservative on these things, and I've shown that as the time we've been up here to make those things balance. We are going to ask them to take care of people, invest in the middle class, implement the things we need to do, but this is a live within our means, and this is good news. This is good news. We're not ready. Some of you said in here with deficits, and I recall too, just so we're clear, we've had forecasts in 2020 that projected $5 billion deficits. By the time we came back in November, it was $3 billion surpluses. So this gives us, and I would tell people, take this seriously. Proceed measured as we go. Use this as a guidepost for what we're doing, but understanding that we're investing. Look, there's been experiments on this. We've seen states like Kansas, back in the early 2000s said, no, we got an experiment here. We're going to cut taxes and cut services, and the economy blew up. And so I'm just telling them, stay the course, but recognize on this is not going to be like last year. It's not a budget year. It's a supplemental budget year. I think it's going to be a very measured inside the parameters that are here. And then let's get a better look. We'll get a better look in February and get a better look next November. Because remember, this is good through the biennium. Surplus is there through the biennium. Again, I keep saying if we go back to the slide, oh no, it's right here. Remember, spending was up, all the spending up stories. Spending is down on this. So it's down, so spending is down. And these things will start to balance out. So that one-time spending, the surpluses that were created, the growth that we have the potential for, Minnesota having, again, strong labor force, strong opportunities, but approach this legislative session measured.
Given the constraints, both for cash and bonding, should money for an Excel renovation be on the table this session?
Those will all be discussions the legislature will talk about. I think we just need to be measured. I think the good news is that we have a luxury of being able to talk about a balanced budget, a state that's economy is growing, opportunities for folks. Again, middle class folks starting to see the benefits of that. But those are discussions that will happen. I don't think, again, you don't stop on everything. You as a family don't stop. But if you see that you've got some unexpected expenses, or if you see revenues not up in that, you just balance accordingly. You start to think a little more modestly about how you're going to do this, but you don't stop those things that continue to grow the economy. So what I'm most excited about is all of those things that we know, all those things that we implemented, that we know make Minnesota a destination, a place where we said it's the best place to raise your family and your kids. We're seeing that pay off in some of these investments. And I'll go back to it and end with, just to be very clear, Mayo Clinic didn't invest $5 billion out of nostalgia. They didn't invest $5 billion just because they started here. They invested $5 billion because this was the best place to do it. This had the best workforce, the best cluster of things around them, and the best opportunity for them to get the results they want. And I think that is true for all these businesses who are making that case. And I think those who will come up here and tell you that folks are going to leave Minnesota, they're going to do this or whatever, first of all, the data doesn't support that. Secondly, that's not who we are as people. So I'm pretty excited to see what's coming on this. I think, again, this is good news. It's good biennium. It's working the way it needs to be. We have an opportunity as a legislature to smooth things out and even get into the further out. But let's come back in February. The legislative session will have just started. We'll have a lot clearer picture on which direction that is, and that should inform us on how we go. So I want to thank all that, and I'm